The world is in shock right now. Businesses are shut down, the economy is collapsing, millions of people are getting sick, and hundreds of thousands are dying. Many of us across the world are stuck in quarantine, wondering, why now? Why did this awful thing have to happen to us? But the questions we really should be asking are, how can we prevent this in the future? And was this even close to the worst case scenario? In this video, I'm going to attempt to explain the steps we as a country, and as United Nations, can take to prevent the next pandemic, or at least limit its effects. I'm also going to explain the nightmare pandemic, a much worse pandemic that could possibly appear in our future. First, let's start with some background. The last major pandemic that created a situation comparable to the one today was the Spanish flu in 1918. In terms of fatality rate, the Spanish flu is thought to be worse than COVID-19, although the death rate for COVID right now is not able to be determined completely accurately because of people who are infected, but not confirmed infected by a diagnostic test. COVID-19 is thought to be more infectious than the Spanish flu because of how easily it is transmitted as an airborne pathogen. The Spanish flu is a form of the influenza virus, while COVID-19 is a coronavirus, a type of virus named for the corona or halo that surrounds each virus. The effects of the Spanish flu were extremely widespread and lasted for a long time. According to a survivor of the Spanish flu, things didn't get back to normal in terms of social distancing for about 4 years. This is mostly because of the second and third waves that happened after the calm that followed the storm of the first wave. The second wave of COVID-19 is supposed to arrive in the fall of 2020 and could have similar implications as the Spanish flu's second and third waves. However, the Spanish flu happened in 1918, and COVID-19 is happening over a century later. Technology and medicine have greatly advanced. The hope is that these advances will allow for the return to normalcy to happen much quicker than it did in the 1918 flu pandemic. Hopefully we will have a vaccine sometime in 2021 that will lead to the near eradication of COVID-19. While this seems like a nightmare to us, this pandemic is not even close to the worst case scenario. To understand what the actual nightmare pandemic would look like, we have to take a closer look at the science behind these zoonotic diseases. Zoonotic diseases are diseases that can be easily transferred from animals to humans. These can be some of the most deadly diseases because the viruses can live in a healthy host animal body, but become extremely deadly or contagious when transmitted to humans. Another reason why these viruses can be extremely dangerous is because of virus reassortment. Reassortment is a process of the recombination of RNA viruses in a host cell that has been infected by 2 or more viruses. The recombination of these viruses can create new viruses with never seen before gene combinations. This is particularly dangerous because if the novel virus gets into the human population, and it is something that we have never seen, it will take a while to develop tests and vaccines to prevent the mass spread of the virus. The most common reassortment happens for influenza, as new flus circulate every season. Pandemics tend to come from the reassortment of virus because the reassortment can allow for easier transmission between species. For example, the H1N1 or swine flu outbreak that happened in 2012 came about from one host cell in a pig becoming infected with multiple flu strains, and then reassortment happened within that cell to create the novel swine flu virus that was easily transmitted from the pig to humans and then was also easily transmittable within the human population. This swine flu had a reproductive number, or R naught, of between 1.3 and 1.7, so each infected person would spread to between 1.3 and 1.7 other people, allowing for exponential spread. Furthermore, researchers at the University of Washington calculated an even higher R naught for school children, with each infected child infecting 2.4 other children. Another huge reservoir for influenza reassortment is the avian population. Bird flu is one of the most deadly flus, with a death rate of about 60%, so a reassortment happening with a bird flu is potentially very frightening. Wild aquatic birds often have host cells infected with influenza and other virus strains that can exchange gene segments. All it takes is one unlucky reassortment for one of those host cells within the birds to create a nightmare virus and pandemic. The reassortment could result in a novel virus with the easy transmissibility of swine flu and the deadliness of bird flu. If the novel virus was transmitted from birds to humans, we would have a nightmare pandemic on our hands, with a number of deaths that we cannot even contemplate now. The only way to prevent that unlucky reassortment, which could be the downfall of the human population, is for humans to limit our contact with animals as much as possible. Limited contact with animals is the best way to limit zoonotic diseases within the human population. Public health experts think that COVID-19 came into the human population because of the types of contact that people in China have with animals. They have open-air live markets that are excellent breeding grounds for viruses, waiting to spring into the human population. The hygiene in these markets is atrocious. The water in these markets that is used to wash animals that are then slaughtered is reused many times and contains the blood and other bodily fluids of many animals. Not only are humans touching this water, but they are also eating the animals that have come into contact with the water. Other cultural practices contribute to this contact between humans and animals as well. Many people who live in rural China live in close proximity with animals, even in their homes, putting them at a much higher risk to contract a zoonotic disease and spread it. Besides preventing these nightmare viruses from ever entering the human population and becoming a pandemic, we can try and be as prepared as possible for a novel virus. Having universal testing centers around the world can help researchers track a virus early and limit its spread. These testing centers can also help us develop a vaccine quicker and earlier. The game of a pandemic all comes down to being able to track where the virus came from and where it is spreading, so people can quarantine effectively and stop the transmission. Having a robust testing system in place that can get tests to every part of the world is the best way to track the virus and stop its spread. While COVID-19 is putting many people out of their jobs and forcing the economy to grind to a halt, the nightmare pandemic I described is much worse. The sheer number of deaths would cause complete panic. The last thing people would be worried about is working and how the economy is doing, because people would be focused on surviving. Compared to that zombie apocalypse, this quarantine would seem pretty mild. Let's hope we have learned from this experience and can take steps to prevent the emergence of new pandemic viruses, or at least stop them in their tracks as they emerge. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something about pandemics and COVID. If you want, consider subscribing by clicking the big red button below and watch any of my previous videos popping up on the screen.
And I've been chilling, watching the ocean with you, baby, up with a slow motion crew, and we up in our clouds when people change, but not